Have a great time taking care of things at home." Those were my husband Nicholas's last words before he and my mother-in-law Audrey wheeled their matching luxury suitcases out our front door. I stood there, still wearing the carefully selected outfit I'd planned for our first day in Dubai, watching as they loaded their bags into the waiting taxi. I couldn't process what was happening. Just yesterday, we'd been going through our itinerary together. The Burj Khalifa visit, the desert safari, the gold souk shopping spree I'd meticulously planned over the past 6 months. The tickets were purchased, the hotels booked, and our schedules perfectly aligned. Or so I thought. "Don't worry about us, dear," Audrey had chirped, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "Nicholas and I will send you lots of pictures." The casual cruelty in her voice made my stomach turn. This wasn't a last-minute change of plans. This was calculated, deliberate. I remained frozen in our doorway as the taxi disappeared around the corner, taking with it my dreams of our first luxury family vacation. The vacation I'd saved for by working overtime at my consulting job for the past year. The vacation I'd planned down to the smallest detail, making sure to include activities that Audrey would enjoy, hoping to finally bridge the gap between us. What they didn't know was that I'd anticipated something like this might happen. Call it intuition. Call it pattern recognition after 15 years of marriage to Nicholas and his mother's constant interference. That's why I'd slipped an envelope into Nicholas's suitcase the night before while he was in the shower. The contents of that envelope would be waiting for them when they unpacked in their luxury hotel room, the same room I'd booked for all 3 of us. My hands trembled as I closed the front door and walked to our home office. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and began implementing the plan I'd been quietly preparing for the past 3 months. The plan I'd hoped I'd never have to use, but had crafted meticulously, just in case. You see, this wasn't just about a vacation. This was about years of manipulation, of calculated exclusion, of watching my marriage slowly slip away as my mother-in-law's influence grew stronger. This was about the joint accounts I'd discovered were being drained, the whispered phone calls that stopped when I entered the room, the gradual isolation from my friends and family. But most importantly, this was about the evidence I'd gathered. Evidence that would make their luxury Dubai getaway much less enjoyable once they opened that envelope. I took a deep breath and looked at the clock. In approximately 16 hours, they would be checking into the address downtown Dubai. In 17 hours, they would likely be unpacking. And in 17 hours and 30 minutes, I estimated, they would be finding my letter, the letter that would change everything. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Did you guys take off yet?" I smiled, thinking about the role she'd played in helping me prepare for this moment. "Not exactly," I replied, "but things are definitely about to take flight." I stood up and walked to our bedroom, where my own packed suitcase stood ready. But I wasn't headed to Dubai. I had a different destination in mind, one that would shock them far more than anything they might find in that envelope. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through our living room windows, I sat down to wait for the moment when my carefully laid plan would begin to unfold, one revelation at a time. They thought they were leaving me behind to take care of things. They had no idea just how well I was about to take care of things. The next day's phone call would be just the beginning. The phone rang exactly when I expected it would. I watched it vibrate across my desk, Nicholas's name flashing on the screen, and let it ring 3 times before answering. I wanted my voice to be steady, controlled. "Hello?" I said, as if I didn't know why he was calling. "What the hell is this, Camilla?" His voice shook with something between rage and fear. In the background, I could hear Audrey's shrill voice demanding he put the phone on speaker. How did I know? I finished for him, my calm surprising even me. "Maybe we should start with how long you've been planning this trip without me. Was it before or after you started moving money from our joint account into your private one?" The sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit my mark. I'd spent the last year watching, documenting, and preparing, all while playing the role of the trusting wife they thought they could easily deceive. It started with small things, as it always does. Missing receipts, unexplained lunch meetings, Audrey's increasingly frequent visits that always seemed to coincide with our date nights. But it was the real estate listing I discovered on Nicholas's laptop 6 months ago that finally opened my eyes to the full scope of their betrayal. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," he stammered. "You mean I wasn't supposed to find out at all?" I corrected him. "I wasn't supposed to discover that you and your mother were planning to sell our house out from under me while I was supposedly in Dubai. That's why you needed me to stay behind, isn't it? To sign the papers when the real estate agent came." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could picture them in their luxury hotel room, the Dubai skyline glittering behind them, the envelope's contents spread out on the bed, copies of bank statements showing systematic withdrawals, emails between Nicholas and the real estate agent, and photos of him and Audrey meeting with lawyers I'd never heard of. But that wasn't what had them truly frightened. No, that would be the last page, the one detailing exactly how their plan would have destroyed not just me, but Nicholas's entire career. "Camilla, please," Audrey's voice cut in. "You're overreacting. We were just trying to protect the family assets. You have to understand." "Family assets?" I let out a laugh that surprised me with its bitterness. "You mean like the family business Nicholas's father left to both of us in his will? The one you've been secretly trying to transfer solely into Nicholas's name?" More silence. I could almost hear their minds racing, trying to figure out how much I knew, how long I'd known it. "I trusted you, Nicholas," I continued, my voice softening. "Even when the signs were there, I kept trusting you. Remember last month, when I suggested we renew our vows for our 15th anniversary? You said yes so quickly, didn't you? Were you already planning this then?" "It's not what you think," he tried, but his voice lacked conviction. "Really? Because I think it's exactly what I laid out in that letter. Every secret meeting, every hidden transaction, every lie you both told me while plotting to leave me with nothing." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "But here's what I don't understand. Why Dubai? Why go through the charade of planning this vacation together?" "Because," Audrey cut in, her voice sharp with defensive anger, "we needed you to be the one who chose not to come. We needed witnesses to see you backing out at the last minute. It would have made everything else so much easier to explain." I heard Nicholas cursing at his mother, but it was too late. She'd confirmed what I'd suspected all along. This wasn't just about money. This was about creating a narrative, painting me as the unstable wife who abandoned her family obligations. They'd planned to use my absence as evidence in what would have been a very nasty divorce proceeding. "Well," I said, allowing myself a small smile, "I suppose we should thank you for that confession, Audrey. My lawyer will certainly appreciate it, since I've been recording this call." The explosion of voices on the other end was almost comical. Nicholas swearing, Audrey screaming about privacy laws, both of them talking over each other in a panic. "By the way," I added, my voice cutting through their chaos, "you might want to check your return flight details. There have been some changes." I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, my heart racing despite my calm exterior. Phase 1 was complete. They'd opened the envelope, seen the evidence, and revealed more than they'd intended to in their panic. Now, it was time for Phase 2. I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were dozens of files, each one a carefully documented piece of evidence I'd gathered over the past year. Bank records, recorded conversations, surveillance photos, but most importantly, proof of what they'd been planning to do with Nicholas's father's company. The company that, according to his will, was meant to be jointly owned by Nicholas and me. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Done! Everything's in place." I smiled, thinking about what would happen when Nicholas and Audrey tried to check their return flight details, only to find their tickets had been canceled. They'd have plenty of time to think about their actions while figuring out new travel arrangements. Arrangements that would be complicated by the fact that all their credit cards were about to be declined. But first, they had a meeting to attend. A meeting I'd arranged with some very interested parties in Dubai, who were eager to discuss certain irregular financial transactions that had recently come to light. The sun was setting outside my window, casting a golden glow across my desk. I picked up my own suitcase, the one I'd packed not for Dubai, but for what came next. It was time to set the rest of my plan in motion. They thought they were leaving me behind to watch over things at home. They were about to discover just how well I'd been watching all along. As I drove toward the airport, my hands steady on the wheel despite the turmoil in my chest. I couldn't help but think about the night I discovered the truth. It wasn't the bank statements or the secret meetings that finally broke me. It was finding my father-in-law's old watch in the donation box. Donald's watch. The one he'd given me on his deathbed 3 years ago, pressing it into my palm with trembling hands. "Take care of the legacy, Camilla," he'd whispered. "Nicholas is brilliant with numbers, but you understand people. The company needs both." I'd worn that watch every day since, until it disappeared 2 months ago. Nicholas had helped me search for it, feigning concern while knowing exactly where it was. Finding it in that donation box, buried under old clothes meant for charity, was like a physical blow. It wasn't just a watch. It was a symbol of everything they were trying to erase. My phone's GPS directed me to turn left, away from the international terminal. I wasn't going to chase them to Dubai. No, I was headed to a small private airfield where Thomas, Donald's old friend and longtime company lawyer, was waiting. "You're doing the right thing, Camilla." My sister Amy's voice came through the car's speakers. She was on standby, coordinating with our team of allies. "Have you checked your email? They're already trying to damage control." I pulled into a parking spot and opened my laptop. Sure enough, there was an email from Nicholas, copied to all the company board members. "Dear board, it has come to my attention that my wife Camilla may attempt to contact you with some concerning allegations. She has been under tremendous stress lately, and I fear this has led to some unfounded suspicions. I assure you that all company transactions have been completely legitimate." I couldn't help but laugh. "He's playing the unstable wife card already? That was faster than we expected." "Keep reading," Amy urged. The next email was from Audrey to Nicholas, accidentally copied to my work email, probably in her panic. "Nicholas, darling, I've spoken to Judge Harrison. He owes your father a favor and says he can expedite everything as soon as we return. Camilla won't know what hit her. Don't worry about the board. I've already spoken to most of them at the charity gala last month. They understand this is for the best." "Perfect," I murmured, forwarding both emails to Thomas. "They're documenting their own conspiracy." I grabbed my suitcase and walked toward the small terminal building. Through the window, I could see Thomas waiting, his silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Beside him stood Catherine Harrison, Judge Harrison's wife, and my closest ally on the hospital board where I volunteered. "Right on time," Thomas greeted me with a gentle hug. "The pilot's ready. Are you sure about this?" I nodded, thinking about the series of events I'd set in motion. By now, Nicholas and Audrey would be discovering that their access to the company accounts had been suspended pending an emergency board meeting. A meeting that would take place in person, not in Dubai as they'd planned. "Did you know," I said to Catherine as we walked toward the small private jet, "that your husband helped Audrey set up a secret trust fund using company money? Money that was meant for the children's wing of the hospital?" Catherine's face hardened. She'd been skeptical when I first approached her with my suspicions, but her own investigation had revealed far more than even I had expected. Judge Harrison's involvement was just the tip of the iceberg. "He'll be receiving some very interesting questions from the ethics committee next week," she replied grimly, "along with several other prominent members of our community who helped facilitate this scheme." As we boarded the plane, my phone buzzed with another call from Nicholas. I declined it, sending him to voicemail. Let him panic. Let him wonder. He'd find out soon enough where I was heading. We all would. "Your father-in-law would be proud," Thomas said quietly as we buckled in. "He always said you were the heart of the company. That's why he left you those controlling shares in his secret will." I froze. "His what?" Thomas smiled, reaching into his briefcase. "The will that Audrey and Nicholas never knew about. The one Donald had me keep safe until, in his words, Camilla needs it most. I think that time has come, don't you?" As the plane began to taxi, I opened the envelope Thomas handed me, my hands trembling for the first time that day. Inside was a document dated just weeks before Donald's death, along with a letter addressed to me. "My dear Camilla, if you're reading this, then my fears about Nicholas and his mother have proven true. I've watched them change over the years, seen how money and power have twisted their values. But I've also watched you stay true to everything this company was built on. integrity, compassion, and genuine care for our employees and community. That's why I've left you 51% of the voting shares, to be revealed only in the event that the company's core values are threatened. Thomas has been instructed to wait until you discover the truth on your own. I knew you would, eventually. You always had a way of seeing through deception. The company isn't just about profits, Camilla. It's about the thousands of families who depend on us, the communities we support, the legacy of trust we've built. Nicholas and Audrey may have forgotten that, but I know you never will. Take care of our people, Camilla. Take care of our legacy. With love and trust, Donald. I looked up at Thomas, tears blurring my vision. All this time, you were never as alone as they wanted you to believe, he finished. Now, shall we go show the board exactly what kind of company they almost lost? As the plane lifted into the sky, I thought about Nicholas and Audrey, stranded in Dubai with their schemes unraveling. They'd thought they were so clever, planning their moves like a chess game, but they'd forgotten the most important lesson Donald had taught us. In both business and life, it's not about the game you appear to be playing. It's about the one you actually are. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the board, responding to Nicholas's attempt at damage control. I smiled as I read the first line. Emergency board meeting rescheduled for tomorrow morning. Attendance mandatory. Location, New York headquarters. Let them scramble to find flights back. Let them realize, one by one, every card they thought they held was about to be revealed as worthless. I had a different hand to play, one that had been dealt years ago by a man who saw everything and planned accordingly. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The boardroom felt different this morning. I'd sat at this table countless times before, usually somewhere in the middle, quietly observing while Nicholas commanded attention from the head chair. Today, as I took Donald's old seat at the head of the table, I could feel the weight of every gaze. Mrs. Collins! Bernard, our eldest board member, leaned forward with concern etched on his face. Perhaps we should wait for Nicholas to... I'm afraid my son and his wife are experiencing some travel difficulties. Audrey's sharp voice cut through the room. She stood in the doorway, looking considerably less polished than usual, her designer outfit wrinkled from what must have been a frantic overnight flight. Audrey, I smiled, gesturing to a chair far from her usual spot beside the head of the table. How nice of you to join us. I trust your flight from Dubai was comfortable? Her eyes narrowed at my calm demeanor. She'd clearly expected to find me emotional, unstable, the narrative they'd been carefully crafting. Instead, she found me surrounded by both the old guard of the company and some new faces, Catherine Harrison, Thomas, and representatives from the hospital board and ethics committee. This is highly irregular, Audrey started, but Thomas cleared his throat. What's irregular, he interrupted, is the systematic attempt to divert company funds into private accounts over the past 2 years. He began distributing folders to each board member. You'll find the complete documentation in these packets. My phone buzzed. Nicholas, trying to connect to our video conference system. I nodded to Amy, who sat in the corner managing the technical aspects of the meeting, and Nicholas's harried face appeared on the large screen. This meeting is unauthorized, he declared, though his voice lacked its usual authority. The luxury hotel room behind him looked chaotic, papers strewn everywhere. As CEO... Actually, I cut in smoothly, your position as CEO is one of the things we'll be discussing today. I opened Donald's letter, the one that had been waiting for this moment for 3 years, along with some other matters your father felt needed to be addressed. The color drained from both Nicholas and Audrey's faces as I began to read Donald's letter aloud. With each word, the room grew more still. The truth of their betrayal laid bare not just to me, but to everyone who had trusted them. Camilla, Nicholas's voice cracked. You don't understand. Everything I did was for the company. Was it for the company when you diverted funds from the children's hospital wing? Catherine Harrison's voice was ice. Or when you conspired with my husband to override board decisions? Audrey stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. You have no proof of... Actually, I pressed a button, and financial records began scrolling on the second screen. We have every proof. Every transaction, every secret meeting, every attempt to manipulate company holdings. I turned to the board members, including the properties some of you were promised in exchange for your silence. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Others sat straighter, their expressions hardening as they realized the extent of the deception. The question now, I continued, isn't about proof. It's about what we do next. I stood, channeling everything Donald had taught me about leadership. This company was built on trust. Trust from our employees, our community, our partners. We can either work to rebuild that trust, or we can let everything Donald built crumble under the weight of scandal and investigation. Are you threatening us? Audrey's voice shook. No, I smiled sadly. I'm offering a choice. The same choice Donald offered me in his letter. Redemption or consequences. I nodded to Thomas, who distributed a second set of documents. These are two possible press releases. The first announces a major restructuring of leadership, citing personal reasons for the changes. The second details everything we've discovered, including the involvement of certain judicial figures and board members in what amounts to corporate fraud. Nicholas's face on the screen had gone ashen. Camilla, please, think about what this would do to the family name. I am thinking about the family name, I replied, touching the watch I'd rescued from the donation box, now back on my wrist where it belonged. I'm thinking about what that name meant to your father, and what it should mean to us all. The next hour was a blur of revelations, accusations, and finally, negotiations. Board members who had been complicit in Nicholas and Audrey's schemes were given the choice to resign quietly or face investigation. New oversight measures were proposed and approved. And through it all, I watched Audrey's facade crack piece by piece as she realized just how completely her plans had backfired. As the meeting drew to a close, I had one final surprise. There's someone else who would like to address the board, I announced, nodding to Amy. The screen split, and a familiar face appeared beside Nicholas's increasingly panicked one. Hello, everyone, smiled Judge Harrison's wife, Catherine. I believe we need to discuss the future of the Children's Hospital wing and the true destination of those diverted funds. I watched as Audrey finally crumpled into her chair, decades of manipulation and control slipping through her fingers. Nicholas's video feed suddenly went black. Whether from technical difficulties or his own choice, I wasn't sure. But as I sat there, in Donald's chair, I felt no triumph. Only a deep sadness for what could have been, and a steely determination for what needed to come next. The company would survive. It would thrive. But first, we had to clean house. As board members filed out, some with heads bowed in shame, others with newfound respect in their eyes, Thomas lingered behind. Donald would be proud, he said softly, but this is just the beginning. Are you ready for what comes next? I touched the watch again, thinking of all the lessons Donald had taught me, about business, about trust, about the true meaning of family. Yes, I replied, looking at the family photos on the wall, the ones that would soon need updating. I'm ready. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas. We need to talk, please. I left it unanswered. There would be time for talks later. Right now, there was a company to rebuild, trust to restore, and a legacy to protect. And this time, I wouldn't be doing it alone. That evening, I sat alone in Donald's old office, my office now, watching the sun set over the city skyline. 15 years of memories played through my mind like a movie. My first day at the company as a junior analyst, Donald's patient mentoring, falling in love with Nicholas, the grand dreams we'd all shared for the future. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since the board meeting. Nicholas's messages had evolved from angry demands to desperate pleas, and finally to a single text that cut deeper than all the others. Dad would be ashamed of what you've done to this family. I picked up the framed photo on the desk. Donald's 60th birthday celebration, all of us smiling. Audrey's arm around my shoulder in what I now recognized as a possessive rather than affectionate gesture. With trembling hands, I placed it face down. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Come in, I called, quickly wiping my eyes. Lisa, Donald's former executive assistant and my longtime ally, entered with a steaming cup of tea, just like he used to have. she said softly, placing it on the desk. 2 sugars, splash of milk. Thank you, Lisa. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. How's the team doing? Processing, she replied, settling into a chair. The news about the diverted hospital funds hit hard. Many of them have children who've been treated there. She hesitated. Camilla, there's something else you need to know. My heart sank. What now? Audrey's been down in HR, telling anyone who'll listen that you're having a mental breakdown. She's trying to paint this whole thing as some sort of paranoid episode. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course she is. What else? Nicholas has been calling board members individually, claiming you manipulated his father's declining mental state to secure that second will. The tea suddenly tasted bitter. Even now, they were trying to twist the narrative, to paint me as the villain in their story. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. Lisa, I said, standing up, could you ask Thomas to join us and get me the security footage from Donald's last hospital stay? An hour later, Thomas arrived, carrying a hard drive. Are you sure about this? He asked as he connected it to the office TV. Watching this won't be easy. Nothing about this is easy, I replied. But we need to be prepared for what they might do next. The footage showed Donald's hospital room 3 days before he died. I was there, reading him the company's quarterly reports. Audrey arrived with Nicholas, not realizing I was hidden by the privacy curtain. Their conversation, picked up by the room's security system, was damning. Just sign these, Dad, Nicholas was saying. It's routine paperwork, nothing to worry about. Donald's weak voice was clear. Where's Camilla? I want Camilla to look at them first. Camilla's not family, Audrey snapped. She can't be trusted with these decisions. Just sign them, Donald. For your son. In the footage, I watched myself step out from behind the curtain, catching them in the act of trying to get a dying man to sign away company assets. The look of shock and hatred on Audrey's face was undisguised. Well, Thomas said as the video ended, I'd say this thoroughly disproves any claims about Donald's mental state or your supposed manipulation. Make copies, I instructed Lisa. Secure copies, and pull all the visitor logs from that period. We need to... My phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar Dubai number. Against my better judgment, I answered on speaker. Mrs. Collins? An accented voice inquired. This is Detective Rashid from Dubai Police. We're investigating some concerning financial transactions made from your company's accounts to several local entities. I caught Thomas's eye. He nodded grimly. We'd wondered what Nicholas had been doing with those diverted funds. Yes, Detective, I replied steadily. We've been conducting our own internal investigation. I'd be happy to share our findings. As I detailed the suspicious transactions, Lisa slipped out and returned with more tea and a stack of files. She'd been quietly documenting everything for years, it turned out. Every strange meeting, every unusual visitor, every late-night call. Your father-in-law taught me to keep 2 sets of books, she explained. One for them to find, and one for the truth. I felt a surge of gratitude for these quiet allies who'd watched, waited, and prepared, just as I had. Donald had built more than a company. He'd built a network of people dedicated to protecting his true legacy. My phone buzzed again. A message from an employee in IT. Mrs. Collins, you should know. Audrey's trying to access the main servers remotely. And there's something else. We found encrypted files in Mr. Collins's private drive. You need to see this. I closed my eyes for a moment, exhausted but resolute. The day wasn't over yet. The fight wasn't over yet. Lisa, call security. Lock down all system access except for essential personnel. Thomas, we need to... Another knock. More urgent this time. Catherine Harrison burst in, her face pale. Camilla, turn on the news. Now. The local evening news was running a story about troubled leadership at the company, complete with carefully selected photos of me looking stressed or upset at various events. Audrey's handiwork, no doubt. But as I watched, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Let them try to spin their stories. Let them attempt to paint me as unstable or manipulative. The truth had a way of emerging, piece by piece, day by day. I turned to my small but loyal team. All right, I said, channeling Donald's steady leadership. Let's show them what real corporate governance looks like. The sun had fully set now, the city lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere in Dubai, Nicholas and Audrey were plotting their next move. But here, in Donald's office, my office, we were already 3 moves ahead. The game had changed, and so had I. The dutiful daughter-in-law was gone, replaced by something they'd never expected. A leader who'd learned from the best, who'd watched and waited and planned. Donald had taught me that true power isn't about control, it's about responsibility, about protecting what matters, even when it hurts, even when it means facing down the people you once called family. I picked up my phone and drafted a company-wide email, my fingers steady on the keys. To all employees, in light of recent events, I want to address the changes occurring within our company. It was time to tell our story, the real story. And this time, everyone would listen. Mrs. Collins? Marcus from IT stood in my doorway, his young face grave. You need to see this. It was nearly midnight. Most of the office had cleared out hours ago, but a core team remained, working through the encrypted files found on Nicholas's private drive. I'd been bracing myself for what we might find, but nothing could have prepared me for this. Show me, I said, gesturing for Marcus to sit. He opened his laptop, pulling up a series of documents. These weren't just regular encrypted files, he explained. They were hidden inside seemingly innocent photos, family vacation pictures mostly. But when we ran our recovery program, my breath caught as I scanned the documents. They weren't just about the company. They were about Donald. His illness, I whispered, the pieces finally clicking into place. They knew. The files revealed a devastating truth. Nicholas and Audrey had discovered Donald's condition months before he showed any symptoms. Medical reports, secretly obtained, showing the early stages of his illness. But instead of telling him, getting him treatment, they'd waited, watched, planned. There's more, Marcus said quietly, scrolling to another document. We found emails between Mr. Collins and several overseas accounts. The Dubai trip. It wasn't just about avoiding you. They were meeting with investors who'd been promised control of the company's international divisions. My hands trembled as I read the emails. They'd been planning to split up Donald's life's work, sell it off piece by piece to the highest bidders. The Dubai vacation was meant to be their victory lap, finalizing deals while I sat at home, unaware that my signature on those routine papers would have signed away everything Donald had built. Mrs. Collins? Lisa appeared in the doorway. The hospital board is on line 1. They've found something in their audit. I took the call on speaker, letting Marcus and Lisa listen. Catherine Harrison's voice filled the room. Camilla, we've traced the diverted hospital funds. They didn't just take the money meant for the children's wing. They were systematically underfunding patient care while padding the books to show full expenditure. People suffered because of this. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about lives. How many patients? I asked, dreading the answer. We're still counting. But Camilla, one of them was Donald. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the desk, memories flooding back. Donald's rapid decline. The premium care facility Audrey had insisted on. The restricted visitor hours that kept me from seeing him as often as I wanted. They put him in a facility they knew was cutting corners, I said, the horror of it sinking in. Their own father and husband. Mrs. Collins? Marcus's voice was hesitant. There's one more thing you should see. He pulled up a final document, a draft of divorce papers dated 3 months ago. But these weren't just any divorce papers. They included a comprehensive plan to have me declared mentally unfit, using testimonies from doctors I'd never met, incidents that had never happened. They were going to take everything, Lisa breathed. Not just the company, but your reputation, your freedom. I stood up, walking to the window. The city stretched out below, lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Nicholas and Audrey were probably still scheming, not knowing that their carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. My phone buzzed, a text from Nicholas. Camilla, please, let me explain. Everything I did was for us. Us. Such a simple word, but it had never really included me, had it? I'd been a means to an end, a convenient pawn in their game. I turned back to my team. Get me the full hospital audit. Every patient affected, every dollar diverted. And Marcus? Get these files to Thomas. All of them. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. I touched Donald's watch, drawing strength from it. I'm going to do what Donald would have done. We're going to make this right. I sat down at my computer and began to type. To the board of directors, by now you've seen the evidence of financial misconduct within our company. What you don't know is the human cost of these actions. As I wrote, I thought about all the patients who had suffered, about Donald's final months, about the employees who had trusted us with their livelihoods. I thought about the easy path, letting Nicholas and Audrey spin their stories, accepting a quiet resolution to avoid scandal. But Donald hadn't built this company by taking the easy path. Mrs. Collins? Lisa's voice was soft. The press is starting to ask questions about Nicholas's absence. And Audrey's been seen entering Judge Harrison's office. I finished my letter and hit send. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd hoped I wouldn't need. Detective Rashid? This is Camilla Collins again. I have some additional information about those transactions, and about several other matters I think you'll find interesting. The night stretched ahead, full of difficult calls and harder decisions. But for the first time since this all began, I felt truly certain of my path. They had tried to bury me in their schemes and lies. Instead, they'd planted the seeds of their own downfall, and I was done playing their game. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the sky when my office door opened again. This time, it was Savannah, Nicholas's secretary of 20 years, who stepped inside. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. I need to tell you something, she said, closing the door behind her. About the day Mr. Donald died. I gestured to the chair across from me, my heart racing. Savannah had always been Audrey's ally, or so I'd thought. She'd been present for countless closed-door meetings, had handled Nicholas's most sensitive correspondence. I should have come forward sooner, she began, her hands twisting in her lap. But Audrey, she made certain threats about my grandson's medical care, about my pension. Take your time, I said softly, pushing a box of tissues toward her. Savannah took a deep breath. The night before Mr. Donald passed, I was working late. Nicholas and Audrey were in the office. They didn't know I could hear them through the vent in the file room. She paused, steadying herself. They were laughing, Mrs. Collins. Laughing about how perfectly their plan was working. How Mr. Donald's inconvenient opinions about the company's direction would die with him. My blood ran cold. What else did you hear? Audrey said something about adjusting his medication, about making sure he wouldn't be lucid enough to change his will again. Savannah's voice broke. I've worked here since Nicholas was in college. Mr. Donald paid for my daughter's wedding. And they... As Savannah broke down, my phone lit up with a message from Detective Rashid. Mrs. Collins, we've detained Mr. Collins attempting to transfer large sums to an offshore account. Local authorities are en route to your offices. I reached across the desk and took Savannah's trembling hands in mine. I need you to be brave one more time. Will you tell the police what you just told me? She straightened her shoulders, something of her old professional demeanor returning. Yes, and there's more. I kept copies of everything. Every meeting, every transaction, every phone call. I told myself it was just being thorough, but really, I think I was waiting. Waiting for someone to finally stand up to them. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the glass walls of my office, I could see police officers talking to Thomas in the lobby. Audrey's voice carried down the hallway, shrill with panic. This is outrageous! Do you know who I am? I demand to speak to... The words cut off abruptly as she caught sight of me through the glass, Savannah by my side. The color drained from her face as she recognized the folder in Savannah's hands, her own personal records, documenting years of manipulation and deceit. Mrs. Audrey Collins? One of the officers stepped forward. We have some questions about certain financial transactions, as well as the care of your late husband, Donald Collins. I watched as they led her away, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor one last time. The woman who had orchestrated so much pain, who had seen herself as untouchable, finally facing the consequences of her actions. My phone buzzed again. Nicholas, one last time. They're arresting me in Dubai. Camilla, please, think about what this will do to the family name. I thought about Donald, about all the patients who had suffered, about Savannah's grandson and countless others whose lives had been affected by their greed. Then I typed back a simple response. I am thinking about the family name. I'm thinking about restoring it to what it meant when your father was alive. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements, press releases, and emergency meetings. But one moment stood out clearly. When Catherine Harrison arrived with the first results of the hospital audit. We've identified the affected patients, she announced to the assembled board. And thanks to Savannah's records, we can prove the deliberate nature of the care reductions. I stood at the head of the table, Donald's watch on my wrist, and made the announcement that would define my leadership. The company will establish a fund to cover all additional care needed by these patients. Every penny diverted from patient care will be repaid tenfold, and we'll be creating a new oversight committee, led by Savannah, to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. The room erupted in discussion, but I wasn't finished. Additionally, we'll be converting Donald's old summer house into a recovery center for patients who need extended care. It's what he would have wanted. As the day wore on, more stories emerged. More witnesses came forward. The full scope of Nicholas and Audrey's betrayal became clear not just to me, but to everyone who had trusted them. That evening, as I prepared to finally head home, I found Savannah still at her desk. You know, she said, looking up from her computer, Mr. Donald told me something once, just before he got sick. He said, the true measure of a leader isn't in the power they wield, but in the trust they keep. I didn't understand then what he meant. I smiled, thinking of all the trust that had been broken, and the new bonds of trust being forged in its place. And now I see he was preparing us all along. He knew someone would need to stand up for what's right. He was just waiting to see who it would be. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a final message from Detective Rashid. Mrs. Collins, we found something in Mr. Collins's Dubai hotel room, something about a second set of properties. I smiled, thinking of Donald's words in his letter. Take care of our legacy, Camilla. The truth was still unfolding, layer by layer, but this time it was unfolding in the light. The contents of Nicholas's Dubai hotel safe told a story I never expected to uncover. Among the documents Detective Rashid's team found was a weathered envelope marked Dad's Properties, Personal. Inside were deeds to 12 residential buildings I'd never known about. Properties Donald had purchased quietly over the years. Mrs. Collins? Thomas's voice was gentle as he laid out the documents on my desk. There's something you need to see about these properties. Each building, it turned out, had been converted into affordable housing for company employees and their families. Donald had kept the rents deliberately low, covering the difference himself. But after his death, Nicholas and Audrey had gradually been raising the rents, pocketing the difference while planning to eventually sell the buildings to luxury developers. How many families? I asked, my throat tight. Over 200, Thomas replied. Many of them have worked for the company for generations. They don't know Donald was their real landlord. He used a separate management company to handle everything. I thought of all the employees I passed in the hallways every day, never knowing how close some of them had come to losing their homes, never knowing how Donald had quietly protected them, or how Nicholas and Audrey had nearly destroyed that protection. My phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. Camilla, you need to see this. The hospital records show something strange about the night Donald died. Within an hour, Catherine was in my office with Savannah, spreading out another set of documents. The story they told was heartbreaking. On Donald's final night, he had regained lucidity briefly. He'd asked for me, but Audrey had intercepted the nurse's call, saying I was unavailable. He wanted to tell you something, Savannah said softly. I overheard Audrey talking about it later. She was furious because he kept asking for you, kept saying there was something you needed to know. I closed my eyes, remembering that night. I'd been at home, waiting for Nicholas to call with updates. He'd told me Donald was sleeping peacefully, that I should rest. There's more, Catherine added. We found discrepancies in his medication logs. Times when he was overly sedated before important meetings or legal appointments. The pieces were still falling into place, each revelation more painful than the last. But something else was emerging too, a pattern of how Donald had prepared for this very possibility. The secret will, the hidden properties, the quiet ways he'd protected those who depended on the company. "Mrs. Collins?" Lisa appeared in the doorway. "The employees are gathering in the main conference room. They've heard about the properties." I found over 100 people waiting, their faces a mix of anxiety and hope. Many of them, I realized, must live in those buildings, must have been dreading the rent increases that had already begun. Standing at the podium, I thought carefully about what Donald would do. Then I spoke from the heart. My father-in-law believed that a company is more than its profits. It's a community, a family. I paused, looking at the faces before me. The residential properties will remain affordable housing. In fact, we're rolling back the recent rent increases and establishing a foundation to ensure these homes remain accessible to our employees forever. The room erupted in applause and tears. As I stepped down, people came forward with their own stories, of how Donald had helped them quietly over the years, of small kindnesses they'd never told anyone about. That evening, as I finally headed home, I found Savannah waiting by my car. "There's one more thing," she said, holding out a small key. "Donald's private safe in the old filing room. He told me if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you found this key." The safe contained a single envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter, dated just days before his death. "My dearest Camilla, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. I've watched Nicholas and Audrey change over the years, seen how greed has poisoned their hearts. I've tried to protect what matters, not just the company's assets, but its soul. You were never just my daughter-in-law. You were the daughter I always wanted, the leader this company needs. I'm sorry for the burden I'm placing on you, but I know you'll understand why it had to be this way. In my desk drawer, you'll find one last deed to the lake house where we used to hold the company picnics. I've left it to you personally, not to the company. Remember that weekend we spent there, just talking about the future? About your dreams for making the company more than just a business? It's your turn now, Camilla. The company is in your hands, but more importantly, its heart is in your care. I know you'll protect both. All my love, Donald." Tears blurred my vision as I read his words. I remembered that weekend at the lake house, how Donald had listened to my ideas about employee support programs, about community involvement, about making the company a force for good. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Dubai police. "Mrs. Collins, the questioning is complete. Your husband has made a full confession." I touched Donald's watch, thinking about cycles of betrayal and redemption, about the difference between justice and revenge. Then, I opened my laptop and began to write. "Dear Nicholas, I've learned a lot this week about family, about legacy, and about the kind of leader I want to be. Your father taught me that true strength lies not in what we take, but in what we protect." The city lights twinkled outside my window as I wrote, each word a step toward healing, not just for me, but for everyone touched by this story. Donald had trusted me with more than just a company. He'd trusted me with his vision of what a business could be, what a family should be. Tomorrow we would begin the work of making that vision real. But tonight, I had one more stop to make. I drove to the lake house, Donald's final gift. Standing on the dock where we'd talked about the future, I finally let myself cry. For the father-in-law I'd lost, for the husband I'd never truly had, and for the woman I was becoming in the aftermath of betrayal. The water lapped gently at the shore, its rhythm constant and soothing. Like Donald had always said, the truth, like water, finds its own level. We just have to be patient enough to let it flow. I was done being patient. Now it was time to let the truth flow freely and to build something beautiful from what remained. 1 year later, I stood in front of the newly opened Donald Collins Memorial Care Center, watching as families entered for the first time. The former summer house had been transformed into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation facility, specifically dedicated to helping patients who had been affected by the previous care reductions. "Mrs. Collins?" A small girl tugged at my sleeve. "My grandma says you're the one who helped make her better." I knelt down to her level, recognizing her grandmother as one of the patients who had suffered under the previous administration's cuts. "Your grandma helped herself get better," I smiled. "We just made sure she had the right tools to do it." The past year had been a journey of transformation, not just for me, but for everyone touched by the events that began with that Dubai trip. The truth, once it started flowing, had revealed even more than we'd initially discovered. Nicholas had ultimately been sentenced to 5 years for financial fraud and conspiracy. Audrey faced similar charges, along with additional ones related to Donald's care. The last time I saw her was at the sentencing, her designer outfit replaced by prison garb, her imperious manner finally broken. But this story wasn't about their downfall. It was about what rose from the ashes of their betrayal. The company had been restructured with transparency at its core. Savannah now headed our new ethics and oversight division, her years of secret record-keeping transformed into a force for positive change. The affordable housing properties had been placed in a protected trust, ensuring they would serve employee families for generations to come. My phone buzzed. A message from Thomas. "The Dubai properties have been officially transferred. The Women's Shelter Project can begin." I smiled, thinking of how fitting it was that the luxury apartments Nicholas had secretly purchased in Dubai would now become a sanctuary for women escaping situations like the one I had faced. Sometimes justice had a poetry all its own. Later that evening, I sat in Donald's old office, my office, reading letters from employees and community members. Each one told a story of healing, of trust rebuilt, of lives touched by the changes we'd implemented. A knock at the door revealed Catherine Harrison, holding a familiar envelope. "We found this in the final audit," she said softly. It was hidden in the hospital's archived files. Inside was a note from Donald, dated the night he died. "My dearest Camila, if you're reading this, then my suspicions about Nicholas and Audrey were correct. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you face what's coming, but I want you to know why I chose you as my successor. Years ago, when you first joined the company, you asked me why we needed to make such high profits if we weren't using them to help people. That question showed me your heart, and I knew then that you would be the one to carry forward the true purpose of this company. The money, the buildings, the contracts, they're all just tools. The real legacy is in how we use them to make a difference in people's lives. I'm afraid my time is short, and they're keeping you away from me tonight. But know this. Everything I did, every secret preparation, was to ensure that someone with the right heart would guide this company's future. Take care of our people, Camilla. And don't forget to take care of yourself, too. All my love, Dad." I touched the watch on my wrist, tears flowing freely. He had signed it, Dad. Not Donald, not father-in-law, but Dad. In the end, he had given me not just a company to lead, but a legacy to uphold. Standing at the window, I watched the sun set over the city, the same view I'd had when this all began, but I was seeing it through different eyes now. Eyes that had seen betrayal but chosen hope, that had witnessed darkness but focused on light. My phone lit up with a message from my sister. "Ready for dinner? The whole team's waiting to celebrate." I smiled, thinking of the family I had found in the aftermath of betrayal. Savannah, Thomas, Catherine, and so many others who had stood by me, who had helped transform a story of deception into one of redemption. As I gathered my things to leave, I passed the wall of photos in the hallway. The old pictures of Nicholas and Audrey were gone, replaced by images of our community outreach programs, the new care center, our employee housing initiatives, a visual testament to what a company could be when led with heart. One photo remained from the old days, Donald at the lake house, his kind eyes twinkling. Below it, I'd placed his favorite quote, "Success is not measured in profits, but in the lives we touch and the trust we keep." I locked my office and headed out to meet my new family. Not the one I had married into, but the one I had built through shared values and mutual trust. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight was for celebrating how far we'd come, and for remembering that sometimes the greatest betrayals can lead us exactly where we need to be. As I drove away from the office, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who had stood watching her husband leave for Dubai a year ago. She was stronger, wiser, more compassionate. They had left me behind to take care of things. And that's exactly what I had done, just not in the way they had expected.